How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing really good. I'm in Canmore. And dude, I've been serving. Well,
Serving like drinks and
at a restaurant.
alcohol? Oh, okay. Or like, so you're serving food.
Yeah, I'm a server now, but it's only been 2 days.
That's cool.
It's pretty fun,
What's
to
the
be
what's the place
honest.
you're working for? What is it like?
Boston Pizza.
Oh, that's weird. I've never heard of that. Is that like a new fancy chain popping up?
Yeah, it's like they've got the special pierogi pizza special. You should check it out. Wing
Nice.
Wednesdays, Fishbowl Fridays. You know how
Nice.
it is.
Dude, that's awesome.
Man, how's your job search going?
It's going all right, I guess. I mean, I applied for EI, so I'm able to get that
Dude,
um,
nice.
with the new because I think there's like new rules around it where like you don't have to have like a crazy amount of hours like you used to. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, really? They reduced the hours down?
Yeah. So, excuse me. I think the minimum is like you have to work at least like 150 hours to be eligible, where it used to be like you have to work like 800 or something like that. So,
Dude, what are you gonna do with that EI money?
I don't know, man. I've been thinking a lot about it, and it's like I'm 26 right now. My living situation is pretty mellow in terms of, my parents being my landlord and stuff like that.
Pretty
I
nice.
have a lot of freedom. I'm going back to school in the fall, and I was just thinking, like, I don't know if I'll be this free again for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'll have this amount of time to just like do what I want to do. And so I'm kind of just leaning into that and trying to enjoy that, not think too hard about filling that spot with something to do, I guess. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like some days I do wake up and I'm like, bro, you're not really contributing to society right now. But
Or
I
maybe you're
I don't know.
investing in your ability to contribute in a way, depending on how you fill your time. Like you can be sitting around wasting it. Then it's like, that's not just a
Right.
good overall life strategy. That's just
Of
long term. That's
course.
gonna, but you could also be like cultivating things that maybe in 10 years pay off like exponentially.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. Like my the business I was working for came to an unexpected closure, and then
Dude,
a
do you
week
want to tell
later,
that story?
I mean, not really. I don't want to name names or like out anyone. Also,
Yeah,
I don't know.
sure.
It's just like unfortunate when those sort of things happen. And
Dude, just give a quick recap.
a quick synopsis. I moved here and I got a cool job at this sweet ass restaurant, and I didn't know too much about the place. And then about a month and a half into working there, there's this Instagram page in my city that's like um, stories of survivors, people who have survived sexual assault and harassment, things like that. And then so these people came forward with stories against my former boss, who I had no idea about. And so when these stories came to light, the shop immediately closed. And overnight, I was kind of out of a job. So, um, yeah, it took me like a week to kind of digest the whole situation. And then I went on vacation for a week, which felt like a good thing to do, kind of like clear my head. And now I've been back for about a week. So, in terms of the job hunt, haven't really been actively searching too hard. Just been kind of
Yeah.
like living my life a little bit and enjoying the freedom, I guess. And it's summertime, things are opening up again, so it's like kind of enjoying the freedom of that as well. So I don't know, it's cool.
Yeah, man, that is cool. And I know what you're saying, taking a week off. Like, there was a lot of like crazy, almost like paradigm shattering revelations I remember you talking to me about with that whole accusation process, eh? Like, someone that was nice just turns out to be a
Yeah, I
scum.
well, yeah, and also, I mean, I think it's possible that he was nice. He was nice to me. I'm sure he was nice to other people, right? But I think it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that like people can contain multitudes within them in terms of their personality, right? And so like this was an incident that happened like a few years ago. And since then, sure, like the guy had been working on being a better person, yada yada. I'm like only hearing this like secondhand, by the way. Like I don't really know how much you can get to know someone in like a month and a half, but I did spend a lot of mornings and a lot of time with this person, and it didn't seem to me like there was anything. But again, I'm a guy and I'm speaking from that point of perspective. So it's like, I don't know, it's just like weird. And it kind of made me think about like when, a woman comes forward with sexual assault allegations, and then like the friends of that guy are like, oh, I don't know, he seems pretty cool. It's like, yeah, well, like how the fuck do you know? You have no idea. Like people are different people depending on who they're around. And I think like everyone's kind of guilty of that. So
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, it's hard to know. I mean, when you watch these documentaries about psychos, there's so many people in there that are like, yeah, he was a great guy,
oh,
and they're
totally.
like a
Because
mass murderer.
yeah, it's like that sociopathic kind of like those people can be normal when they have to be because they have to be in order to keep the, I don't know, the eyes away from them in terms of like their guilt and things like that. So I don't know, man.
Okay,
Just a
here's a
weird
weird thought.
situation.
Do you think there's sometimes where you're around someone and they actually bring out what feels like more of you than you actually feel when you're by yourself, let's say? So they bring out parts of you that almost never come up when you're not around them.
I think that's an interesting thought for sure. I think inherently people are social beings, right? I think, you know, evolution has shown us like forming communities is beneficial to survival and things like that. And I think it's very possible that being around someone could inspire you to behave a certain way other than, if you were left to your own devices. I think that's a interesting point.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of the idea of like mutually beneficial relationships where you can have relationships where the outcome is like much better than just the two inputs.
Yeah,
It's like the
totally.
great part about life, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like if both people are on the mutual level of like being open to learning from the other person, then yeah, there's potential for who knows what, man. Like I think it kind of shows itself in like when you look at sports, like where like if you're by yourself and you're like trying to push yourself, I think you can only get so far. But when you're with other people who are maybe like at the same level or even like above you, they can kind of like inspire you to perform at like the highest level possible that might not have been possible if you were just like, hanging out by yourself. So
Yeah, it's like the quote, you're the average of the five people you hang out with most. Think everyone feels that a tiny bit. And
mhm.
how much, I was wondering when you were saying that, how much do you see that in comedy? Where it's like if you're around shit comics, like you're probably gonna be shit.
um honestly, I I don't think that really transfers to the comedy world if I can be honest about it. Like I feel like comedy is such an individualistic thing where it's like even if you are around quote unquote shit comics, I don't know. Um,
That's, I guess,
like,
your own definition.
yeah, well, like I think you're still gonna rise to the occasion and like perform your best, right? And like do your best. Like I just, yeah, I don't know. I think perhaps this concept applies in comedy when you get kind of like echo chambers. So like, I see like a lot of these like comedy classes popping up where people are like learning comedy and they're like, and don't get me wrong, that's totally cool if it gets your foot in the door and you can learn how to structure a joke and you learn from that. But I think there's no better teacher than like the real world, right? So you kind of have to like eventually graduate from that class and go out into the world and like try it. But when you say you're the average of the five people you hang out with, so say you're in a class and you're all just beginner comics and you're hanging out with five other beginner comics, you're all, of course, going to be like supportive of each other, right? Where it's like, oh, that was great, or oh, you're doing awesome. And so it's kind of this weird echo chamber
Mm.
where you get like this false sense of like security where you're like, I'm crushing with these guys. That must mean I'm a pretty funny person. And then I've seen those same people come out to a regular comedy show where it's regular people who are there to see a comedy show, and people can be fucking judgmental, man, you know? So like the real world is hard out there and you can bomb hard and it feels horrible. But I think like, yeah, I think it's important to keep that perspective of like, you know, yes, I'm doing well, but who am I around and who's in the audience? And I don't know.
Okay. So idea with comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the it's fortunate like some of those classes make the average of the 5 people you hang out with most people that are at least like going up on stage. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
your friends like they're not doing anything. I guess it's a similar to any activity. If you're hanging out with people that actually do it, that's better than people that don't in some
Yes,
way.
that is also a great point. And I don't mean to like poo poo on the whole comedy class thing. I think it's an integral beginning point for a lot of people, for sure. And I think you are right in a way where, like, excuse me, if you like hang out with higher level comics, you do kind of want to elevate your own jokes. Or like I remember when I first moved here to Victoria and I started doing comedy regularly, I had one of the other comedians like say like, hey, it's like good to have you here because like it's good to have like a new person who's good at comedy kind of shake up the situation and kind of make us work a little harder, you know? So I
Yeah.
think in a lot of ways, like people can become quite complacent in comedy where they're like, find a set that works and then they do that set for like 10 years, you know, like
Yeah.
and you could see it with kind of a lot of older comedians who have kind of like had their day in the sun, you know, and then they come back and they're kind of just like, okay, this is the same material that's like on your album or whatever, like, you know, some new stuff would be not, you know, like I don't know.
Man, what did you think the difference was going from Whitehorse to Victoria, and the different comedy scenes?
Oh man, I definitely it was there's a lot to be said about that transition. I feel as though I worried a lot because I was like, well, what if I'm only funny to people in Whitehorse? Like, what if I just, because I did a lot of like Whitehorse quote unquote material. And so, I mean, I was kind of worried that like that material wouldn't transfer to another city. But I had a good friend of mine, George Moratis, tell me, like, hey, man, if you're funny here, you'll be funny anywhere. And there's another piece of advice I got early on was like, hey, make sure you are writing jokes that can travel. So like if you ever were to go on the road or find yourself in a new place, like jokes that are kind of universal and not so niche to like one place on the map. And so yeah, the transition of moving here, I think, was so vital and so important for me as like a stand-up comedian. I just don't think I would have gotten to where I'm at right now if hadn't made the move, just because, you know, Whitehorse, I love the comedy scene there. I love the people that are doing that sort of thing there. I mean, there's a wholesome, very supportive community there, but you get, one set a month, right? You get like a monthly show, right? And so, I mean, if you're trying to get good at something and you do it 10 minutes out of an entire month, how good can you really get at it, right? So, like, I wasn't able to get the kind of repetitions that I needed or the kind of, regular spots that I needed to progress in my art form. So I think moving to Victoria is super vital for that.
Oh, totally, bro. Like moving to Victoria. Do you think you could build a career in comedy out of Whitehorse? Like where maybe that's the only thing you're doing for income, or is that kind of impossible up there?
I think you could use it to supplement your income. I always thought about like if I were living in the Yukon, I would just take it upon myself to start a show somewhere, maybe like a bi-weekly show, and run it, and then you might be able to supplement your income. And then, but I think just living in the Yukon, it's so remote, and that like I just couldn't imagine doing a weekly show there, because there's less than 10 people that tell jokes regularly in the Yukon. And
Yeah.
so unless you wanted to have the same show every week where everyone's doing the same material, I mean, I'm sure it would be a great tool for the people there to kind of like boost their skills and elevate themselves. And I'm also not trying to like talk down to any of those folks. There's some very funny people in the Yukon, but there's something to be said about like, it's not how many years you've been doing it. It's like what you've put into those years, right? So,
Oh, totally. Man, how is it going now that everything's opened up again? Are people being weird at the comedy shows?
weird in what way? How do you mean?
I guess like maybe different than they were previously, going out to a comedy show, having some drinks, like being in a crowd. I mean, I wouldn't expect that I'd be any different, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm just wondering if the vibe's different, I guess.
The vibe is definitely different. I remember like when things locked down in March, they locked down for a good like 3 months, right? And so like live performances were kind of not a priority, which completely makes sense. It's a fucking pandemic. It's kind of last on the list of important things. As harsh as that is for a lot of people's livelihoods, um, having a show at a bar or a music venue, it's not top essential service, right? And so
You're dead in the water, essentially.
yeah, and so after shows opened up again, kind of at the end of summer, I remember coming back here at the end of August, and so September and October and into the November, I was doing shows here in 2020, and the vibe was like we're happy to be here, but there was like this undercurrent of like, like no one's vaccinated yet. We're still not out of the woods. It just, I mean, we were doing shows, but there was kind of like this undercurrent of like, there's
Yeah.
still a thing going on that's very real in a lot of places in the world. So, but now coming back to it this summer, with I think BC is in like phase 2 or phase 3 of their rollout of their getting back to normalcy, and most of the people have their first dose, if not their second dose. And so people are ready to relax. And I've noticed this summer has been awesome for comedy so far. I mean, people starting up the regular weekly shows again and starting up new shows that didn't exist before, and people trying new material that they've had time to work on, and just like a general vibe of like, wow, I'm so grateful to be here, being able to do this again. And I feel like as an audience, they're able to relax a little bit and be like, okay, you know, we're not completely on the other side of this thing, but we're getting close, and we're ready to kind of like, have a laugh. And yeah, so it's
Dude,
interesting.
yeah, man, it's pretty interesting. We're almost through COVID, just watching how society like slowly like moves back towards the average, slightly
Hmm.
shifted by the pandemic.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's crazy we lived through that pandemic. It's like that's history.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, and especially like trying to do comedy, I find it's very much like your individual point of view. And so it's kind of a weird situation right now where like for the last year we've all kind of had the same situation for the most part. Like we've all, like, when is the last time a society as a whole has collectively gone through the same hardship? It seems like, I don't know, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a good point. And like everyone was watching the same news channels again. They're trying to get on the same page.
Hmm.
Everyone had something to relate with someone else about. Like everyone was kind of following the same topics. In normal
Yeah.
times, that doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah, well, when you think about like pop culture, like there's a trend that goes through, but like it might not permeate to like the smaller towns or like the farther reaches of society. But I feel like this whole pandemic was something that worldwide, this was like a thing, right? So it's kind of interesting to see. Like, when was the last time that happened? World War II or something? I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Like
pretty
like the global event, like it's, I don't know. It's weird. Maybe
whole
like
world like shut down.
9/11 was maybe
Yeah.
something like I'm trying to think about in my lifetime a similar time where everyone was like, whoa, here is this big catastrophic thing. Like, how are we going to move on from this? I don't know.
Yeah, and then coming out the other end of it certainly teaches you a lot about the world. I wonder how it's going to shift the perspective of people that lived through it compared to like the younger generation that won't remember it. If it'll be that significant of an event that
Right.
it'll like change a generation's perspective.
Yeah, it's tough to say, dude. I think, I don't know, man. It's been what? It's been a year and almost a year and a half
Yeah, it's
soon.
around
Like,
that. Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know, like, I know you and I are talking like, oh yeah, it's almost over, but is it?
I don't know, to be
Is it?
honest. Like
To be honest, I have
throughout
no
the
idea.
but that's a weird thing throughout the pandemic. When we look back, we'll probably have like a decently formed narrative about what happened, its implications, its
Yeah.
severity. But through it, like I've always just had the sense of like, I have no idea where we're at. Some people say it's intense. Some people are like, we're overblowing it. And it's just like, I
Yeah.
have no idea personally.
Yeah. I mean, I took the precautions. I, tried to do my part and as a human being to try and not spread this shit around and try to be safe and keep my family safe. But other than that, like, I think reading into the news too much or being inundated with all this information about death and mortality rates and things like that, it doesn't benefit you as a human being. Like, it doesn't help you
No, like
from your own day-to-day life. Like, I think it's important to have those perspectives on what's going on worldwide. But if where your head is buried, you're not really like, you know, living with the people around you. I don't know.
yeah, it's so true. It's like if you start deriving your meaning from how many COVID precautions you're taking, it's a very like shallow game kind of. And it causes a lot of like, I don't know if
Yeah.
it's like even, it's like if you wear masks, wash your hands, get vaxxed,
Hmm.
how much more effort do you need to spend on it than that? Should you spend that time just loving the people around you and like working on your own journey?
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I definitely agree with you there. I think that's all you can do, right? So, I don't know.
Dude, how much fear porn do you consume?
Um, not not really a lot. I don't really I mean, I like to stay informed about certain things. I'm looking less at things due to the virus and this pandemic we find ourselves in, and more to the state of our planet and the state of our consumption as a human race, and just the models that we have in place that are just completely unsustainable. And I think that sort of thing is the type of stuff that I ingest more in terms of fear porn. I think we should all have a healthy dose of fear about our planet and make some
That's a good
changes.
point, dude. That's a really good point. It's like hard to distinguish between real data that maybe you should start considering when you're taking on like the individual responsibility required of a citizen
Hmm.
compared to just like clickbaited essentially content where
Yeah.
you're paying someone and it's like a form of entertainment, I guess. But dude, that's crazy. So if you're most afraid of one thing, would you say right now it's environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen already this summer the effects of heat waves worldwide, and I know the situation right now in Victoria, where I'm at, is on the island is pretty dire. We've had record heat on the island, and we're still logging old growth, right? So there's still companies that are like logging these giant trees, which are essentially sinks for carbon emissions and
Good
home to
point.
like many different, biodiverse, you know, situations.
We need those trees.
We
We
need
need them
those
sucking in
trees.
carbon.
I mean, also those trees are over 1,000 years old. It's like, can you cut any other trees? Like, there's a way to cut down trees and harvest lumber that's sustainable, right?
Yeah.
And what's
Like,
going on right
can't you have a
now?
farm? Like a tree farm?
Of course, yeah. There's tree planting. There's tree farms. There's sustainable ways of logging, because logging, of course, in British Columbia is like a huge industry. And of course, I don't want to take jobs out of, you know, away from people, but there's a way to do it. Like what's being done right now is essentially like it's a quick and dirty, it feels like a quick and dirty cash grab with no real um afterthought about the repercussions of what's going to happen afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh well, it'll grow back. And if you look at the places that have been excavated, it's like, yeah, they might grow back, but not in our lifetime, not anytime soon, maybe in like 200, 300 years. But at that point, where are we going to be, right? So I don't know.
So I guess that was a debate in British Columbia recently. The debate being the government said they're going to try to stop old growth, or they were going to stop old growth, chopping down of those old growth trees,
Mm-hmm.
old growth forestry or whatever, the
Mm-hmm.
forestry industry. And then it turns out that there were areas still being forested that had old growth in them
Mm-hmm.
because of the bylaws or whatever, the permits
Right.
or bylaws put in place. And
Right.
then there was like a large outrage
Mm-hmm.
around that, considering the government broke their word, although they didn't break it legally. The people who were
Yeah.
foresting were within their right. Permits given by the government, the people that give permits. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, interesting debate. I agree, though. It's like
I
probably
just,
keep the nice
yeah.
trees.
Yeah. I just
Uh,
think it's like, it's hard to be on the side of the people that are like cutting down these ancient trees, where it's
So
like,
the side of the people, I know that side. That side is listen, this is our business. We have these permits. These permits are put in place for a reason because the people that have these permits get to run their industry. This is our system. If you
mm-hmm.
don't like the system and you don't like what's produced by the system, don't pay with it. Don't engage with it with your dollars or take it up with the permit writers. Take it up with the government, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's like, I get that perspective. If you can sell cocaine, let's say it was legal, and you set up
Mm-hmm.
a business doing that, is it the person that decides to take advantage of that business, or is it the person that puts in place the parameters to set up that business? Who is liable? Maybe both on some level, but
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I yeah, I just look at the people that are like protesting and defending, and it seems like a moral cause to me. It seems like,
yeah,
it seems like these things like industry and business are not bigger than our livelihoods as human beings, if that makes sense, or our
yeah,
future, where it's like, I understand, like, yes, we need to, these people have jobs and they need to, like, they have the permits, like you said, but like, I feel as though as a species, we have to be like, look, we invented these concepts of business and these concepts of profit and things like that, where like we're literally excavating the things that we need to survive for this made up currency that we invented. Right? Like, I might be getting too existential on you, but I just feel as though like there's certain things that are bigger, and they're worth more to preserve.
yeah. I agree. Like, I think that's the protesters' outlook. But when I think about it myself, I'm like, maybe attack something that will actually produce results within the system. Often the protesters are against business or
Mm-hmm.
against some abstract thing that doesn't actually account for how it is that people make the decision to go about and engage in these activities. So if you're just going to protest against the business of forestry, that's like pretty undefined and it's unlikely to produce any type of real results. You have to go at the permit, because the permit is what produces the forestry.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So the cause is admirable, but the very abstract cause is not pragmatic in my opinion. And it would be better to pinpoint something and like frickin'
Right. Totally.
go at. Yeah.
I
And
think the trouble with this is that it's like, yes, you want to pinpoint exactly what to do, and people have. They've been, phoning Premier John Horgan day and night, being like, hey, why
yeah.
did you let this happen? Why is this going on? Like, why is this allowed to go on? And like these treaties that happen with the traditional First Nations that are here are, maybe not the most just paperwork and things like that. And so I know people are trying to protest that aspect of it, but the fact is that while we're all like figuring out what the best way to do this is, they're in there and they're chopping trees
Yeah.
down and they're on the ground. They're, you know, and so of course you want time to organize yourself, but at that same time, while you're getting organized, trees are being cut down and you're losing the fight, right? So I get why people are setting up camp and putting themselves physically in the way of this machinery. It's like
Yeah.
pretty hardcore. It's like,
And
wow.
dude, if you do that, respect to you. That's taking real action. If you like chain yourself to a tree, that's respectable behavior.
I think it's
Like
fucking
that's,
badass.
if you decide to do that, if you're tweeting about it, we know what you're doing. It's not very much.
Yeah, but I just still think it's like I mean, I think I had a night like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago where I like saw an Instagram video and then suddenly I was like, wait a second, this is happening like in my fucking backyard. Like this has been happening for what, like 8 months now or something like that. Like it's been happening for a while. And so I in on one hand, it's like, yeah, the social media warrior isn't doing that much, but at the same time, it's like I never would have known about any of this shit if it weren't for people being active on social media. So
That's a great point. Yeah, it does spread a cause and that it does gain momentum or it
mhm,
does like produce momentum for that cause.
mhm,
So there's this concept in political activism, let's say
mhm,
from the economic perspective, that's called NIMBYism, which is essentially this perspective of not in my backyard. If something's taking place in your backyard,
mhm,
like you're saying, like
mhm,
chopping down these old growth forests,
mhm,
you're very likely to be outraged about it.
mhm,
Now, often what happens is you're outraged about it and
mhm,
your government, let's say, um, permit or makes it unpermittable to like engage in forestry,
mhm,
just for this example.
mhm,
So you shut down that industry, the people lose their jobs and you don't extract those resources. But
mhm.
those resources still have to be extracted because you there's gonna be there's a need for the product, right?
Right,
So paper, let's say, or whatever they're using
right,
these trees for, or just building houses, whatever.
right. There,
And
these
so
trees specifically are being shipped to like China, or they're being shipped across seas. They're not even being processed in Canada.
yeah, they're just being shipped away. So if you shut that down,
Mhm,
trees will still get cut down and they'll
mhm,
still get shipped. Now, maybe they'll be done in China, maybe it'll be in Japan, maybe it'll be
mhm,
somewhere where there's less environmental regulation, whatever.
mhm.
But unless you actually reduce the production of a certain commodity,
Right.
there's going to be production of that commodity. Now, in Canada, it's interesting because there's a lot of this NIMBYism going on where
Mhm,
we don't want mining in Canada. We don't want oil and gas extraction. We don't want forestry.
mhm.
All that stuff's going to take place. It's just going to take place elsewhere. Do we want Canadian regulation, Canadian business, and Canadian employment? Or would we rather just send it elsewhere and pretend it's not happening? Right. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tough. Like for me, like in the Yukon, we talk about mining a lot. That's one of the
Mhm,
main industries up there. And a lot of people
mhm,
protest mining. I'm almost like, listen, if we need these minerals, maybe Canadians should do it because we're going to care about the environment afterwards, at least more so than maybe a third world country. We're going to pay people what they're worth and maybe not pay them a couple bucks on the day. And
Hmm.
we're going to build out our own like commodity infrastructure
Hmm.
rather than just sending the business elsewhere.
Right.
And so it is a perspective, but on the other side of it, maybe, yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that?
I think that's like a very strong point. Although I think like we're talking about these infrastructures that exist that, have existed with the same practices for many years. And I think maybe we could spend the extra whatever it is, money or extra time and energy to ensure that these structures of business and resource exploration are done so in a way that minimizes the impact, right? Like
Yeah,
when I think about it, it's like this is like, a over 1,000-year-old tree. Surely there are other trees, right?
and
I
little
mean,
ones,
just
or whatever.
just cut down 1,000 little guys, or I
Yeah,
don't know, like figure it out,
yeah.
but it's just I don't know.
It's
I don't
so
know.
true.
I,
But
I
it's
feel
yeah,
bad talking about this stuff because I am in no way an expert. I am a
yeah.
stand-up comedian. I fucking make jokes about dumb shit for hopefully a living,
Totally.
right? So I'm in no way an expert, but I definitely consider myself on the side of the people that are fighting the fight against this stuff. So
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the, I guess it's like that stuff is important to be informed about because it informs your political leaning, which informs your vote, which presumably shifts to like your politics, and
right, of
democracy
course.
moves itself in the right direction.
Hmm.
But then it's like almost no one really knows what they're talking about. And how
Yeah,
often are you voting on a premise that when you dig into it, you realize maybe you're
yeah,
very ill informed or naive or whatever?
yeah.
And I'm trying to be careful of that, although I'm no expert either. And like I don't
I
spend that
know.
much time on
I feel like I will read an article and I will have my mind swayed in one direction, and then I'll read an opposing article, and then I'll get swayed in that direction. And I'm like, dude, I'm too fucking gullible to be on the internet.
Dude, have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Dunning-Kruger effect. Is that a psychology term?
Yeah, it's a psychology term. It's the observation that when you read an article about something you know a lot about, like let's say you read an article about stand-up comedy or some perspective on a comedy set, how
Right.
often is it that you're like, oh, this article's like pretty wrong, pretty naive, and it's just surface level and doesn't know what they're talking about?
Right.
Like, do
Um,
you notice that when you're
I
like
mean, I
reading?
don't I don't read a lot of those articles, but there are certain times where I have read something that I'm interested in, or yeah, like that where you're like, wait, they got this wrong, or I don't
Yeah.
really like what they
Or
said
maybe
about
like
that.
the representation of skiing in a movie or something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
You
yeah.
just
Something that's in
notice,
my wheelhouse, right? Yeah.
yeah, you notice right away like the representation's off in some way. It's just
Hmm.
not quite right.
Hmm.
You pick this up on stuff you know about, but when you don't know about that stuff, you just consume it and assume it at face value to be right.
That's so true.
And so like this happens in all topics you like try to inform yourself about, where you
Right.
just forget that what you're consuming is probably a bit biased or probably lacking some detail.
Yeah, that's true.
And you just never think of it. You take it at face value to be correct. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting once you notice it, it's like,
Yeah, that's true, man. I mean, I try to be conscious about the things that I consume, and quite often I'll get lost in an article or something like that and be like, wait a second here, what was I trying to do? Yeah, like I go on my
yeah,
phone to look something up, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, it turns out this is this, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know, man.
yeah. And then like, but sometimes I'll discover like some information or whatever. I think it's important. Like, let's
Hmm.
say, like lately I've been into economics, obviously, and it's like something about monetary policy that's like
Hmm.
pretty crazy when you look into it.
Hmm.
Then it becomes something you think's kind of important, but in your day to day, you don't see the influence of it that much, or maybe you
Of
do a
course,
little bit, but
of course, yeah.
it's such a large scope thing that
Hmm.
it's almost irrelevant to you. It's almost
Mm,
like you just have to accept it and just like keep living.
hmm.
But yeah, then it starts messing with you and like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, one thing that's been messing with me is I read an article recently about recycling and how recycling in like the 80s and 90s was like a clever ad campaign put on by people that make
Are you
hard
serious?
plastics. And they're like, yeah, if we like brand our products with like this cool like symbol, but the reality is that there are like tens of different kinds of plastics and they can't all be melted down together. And as soon as you sort them out and do like all the work that's necessary to separate the ones that can be melted, they're only good for like one other reuse, right? And so here we are with this product that's single use, but by putting it in a special bin and putting it in a special place where we think it's going to be turned over and over again to make like more plastics, and we're like, yeah, it's not really that bad. Like it's way cheaper and way easier to use raw virgin materials to make these products. And so they're never going to use something that's harder to use and not as good to make these products. And so I was reading this article and I was like, holy fuck, I've been duped. And I don't put it on the consumer either, or people as a whole, right? We can only make decisions based on what we've been informed, right? And so I think like there has to be a certain level of compassion when you discover things where you're like, oh shit, I'm doing this wrong, or I'm doing this that's not that great for the environment. You have to realize it's like the structures in place and there's only a certain amount of options afforded to you, right?
Dude, you blew my mind with that. I've never thought about that before. I've never even questioned recycling before. I was always like saving the
I
planet.
worked
Boom,
at a
boom, boom.
recycling facility for a number of years, and I never questioned how thing like I always thought like, yeah, I bet it's better than just throwing it in the landfill, and I'm sure it is, but
Hmm.
by how much, I'm not sure, right? And so
Hey, bro,
I
tell
think
me
I think
this.
it might be different, like depending on where you are in the world too. This was a U.S. centric article, and it kind of dealt with like recycling in the United States. So I don't know how things are done up here, but yeah, it's tough, man. It's hard because you just want to live your life, and you go to the store and you buy something, right? And then
Hmm.
you have this container that's there forever, and it's like, fuck, dude, can we figure this out? Like,
Yeah, it's tough. It's like, yeah, it's like yeah, it's like there's always like two sides to a good behavior almost. There's a side that,
mm,
hey, it's better than doing like the crappier behavior. Then there's
mm,
the other side that's like, it could be better though.
of
And you,
course, of course,
yeah, it's tough. It's like
yeah,
if you get a Tesla,
hmm,
you get to stand on your moral high horse and be like, yeah, I got a full on electric car, boom,
hmm,
saving the environment. Or
hmm,
do you take the perspective of, well, you're still mining all that lithium, et cetera, et cetera. Those are freaking problem
of course,
minerals. And
right,
it's like this
yeah,
cause. I guess that's improvement though. Maybe you just keep walking down that line.
yeah, I guess so. And I think like as people, we can only truly utilize the opportunities that are afforded to us, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people are pioneers though. They're like, fuck it, this is bullshit. I'm gonna start my own company, right? And
Yeah.
and there's like I was reading up on like laundry detergent, how like there's like this like it's called greenwashing, where like companies will advertise themselves as super green or environmentally conscious when in reality it's a facade. So like there was like this type of laundry detergent that was like, hey, look, it's like this papery box that our laundry detergent is in, and then you like rip open the box and on the inside it's like soft plastic, which is actually harder to recycle than the original hard plastic
God
the thing was
damn it.
made out of. And so it was like just creating the illusion that we're doing something when
Hmm.
in reality it's like it's actually worse now and we're fucked still. So I don't know.
Dude, that's funny to think about. It's almost like in a free market system where people are trying to get the consumer's attention and
Mm-hmm.
businesses are competing for the consumer's attention. There are companies that offer something of value legitimately, like maybe a more biodegradable product, in our
Mm-hmm.
case, like laundry detergent, something that
Mm-hmm.
genuinely does not harm the environment. They
Mm-hmm.
get business, more business.
Mm-hmm.
And then other companies use this strategy of like just trying to seem as if you're doing that when you're
Mm-hmm.
really not doing it. In the exact
Mm-hmm.
same way that in like evolution, there's things that can actually harm you and
Mm-hmm.
signal it, like a wasp, like a black and
Right.
white wasp. And
Yeah.
then there's these bugs that just start mimicking the wasp's colors and they
Mm-hmm.
just try to survive in the environment.
Yeah, man.
That's like
Yeah.
capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But it's
Yeah.
funny when they're like, hey, the polar ice caps are melting. You guys got to use less straws. And it's like, that's the problem? Fucking straws, dude. Like, I don't know, man. I think
Yeah.
it's important like to vote with your dollar as much as you can and support the companies that are trying to do things more ecologically sound. But I mean, what can you really, I mean, I hate to be pessimistic, but like until these larger corporations change, like me as an individual, I can only do so much.
So I guess where I lean towards optimism is people do end up voting with their dollars. And a good case study is the electric car phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe electric cars aren't perfect, but they're certainly burning less gas than
Mm-hmm.
if you drive a car for its whole life cycle. If you mine
Mm-hmm.
some batteries and make a car out of it, that's probably less polluting than driving a carbon emitting car for
Of course.
25 years.
Yeah,
So
of course.
maybe it's not perfect, but you reduce the carbon load.
Mm-hmm.
And what's one of the biggest companies in the world now? It's like Tesla. So the
Right.
system has placed on a pedestal this value and then produced a very large manufacture of these products.
Right.
And so there's hope, innovation is working. We're
Yeah, that's
moving
true.
in the
I
proper
like that.
direction. And
Mm-hmm.
to place the fault at the feet of the corporations that have been produced in a capitalist system, I'm like, hey, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe that's our only way out of it. That's how innovation takes place.
Yeah, I like that. I like that optimism. I like that idea of using the structure to garner change in a positive way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's not perfect, but it's the only thing we know about that actually works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you there.
yeah, so it's pretty good though. So overall, would you say you typically look at things on the optimistic side, pessimistic side, try to be balanced? Like where do you think you naturally lean towards?
Just the world itself or my personal life or
Yeah, just say like your personal perspective.
my personal perspective is I like to be optimistic with um like a realistic backdrop, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Where it's like I I love to see the beauty in other people, and I hope that people are benevolent by and large. I hope that people are like-minded like myself, that I'm not trying to hurt anyone else with my existence. I'm trying to just exist in a way that I can help the most amount of people and also create a situation for myself to be the best version of myself, therefore perpetuating my ability to help others. And I hope that people are on like a similar path, right? And so like I'm very hopeful for the goodwill of humanity at large. But then every once in a while you encounter some truly malevolent person and you have to be like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe my ideas are a bit lofty and that's not the case for everyone. And who knows what this malevolent person has been through, whether it's trauma or abuse themselves or things like that. And so I try to take that kind of holistic approach to things. But yeah, I'd say my perspective is mostly optimistic with an underlying realistic view that we're not everyone is on the same page, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's like optimistic, but hopefully not naive. And it's
Exactly. I
like,
would say not. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, dude, I try to do that too. And it does seem like, for the most part, people typically act how you treat them. I've
Of
noticed.
course.
I
Yeah.
see this at work now. I'm in this new serving job, and
Hmm.
if you treat your coworkers as if they're competent and your friends and you respect them,
Hmm.
they treat you like that. Now,
Hmm.
people get in all these weird fights where their ego gets involved and they start treating their coworkers as if they're crappy. Then their coworkers actually start acting crappy towards them. So it's
Hmm.
this like self-fulfilling prophecy type thing.
Yeah.
And of course, that's for the most part. Some people you treat them great, they're still scrubs, and that's you can't get away with that. But I
Yeah.
often think, yeah, if you start treating people as if they're crappy, chances are they will be crappy to you. So you
Yeah.
almost manifest that yourself.
They'll live up to the expectations that you throw
Yeah,
upon them. So
totally.
if you expect them to be shitty, then chances are they're going to be like kind of shitty towards you.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't know. Have you seen that in your workplaces or just life? Like, is that a fair enough statement?
no, I definitely think that is a fair enough statement, and I definitely think that yeah, people go about human interaction a lot of different ways, right? There's
Yeah.
no blueprint blueprint for how to work with other human beings or how to interact with them or form relationships. And I've definitely seen a lot of interesting techniques to try and get people to do what you want them to do or to exist in the archetype that you project onto them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I guess that's the fun part about working. You get to see a bunch of people that you would never like encounter just in your personal life and interact with them.
Yeah, I've made a lot of cool connections through working in different places. And I think especially like when the work itself is kind of hard, you kind of have to create like a strong bond with the person you're with, because if the work is hard and then the inter relationships between coworkers is also hard, then it feels like double the work. It feels like way harder. But if it's
Yeah.
like you both acknowledge like, hey, this job is going to suck sometimes and we're in it together, then you can kind of get through it a little bit easier. So
Yeah. Man, what do
yeah,
you think's your favorite job that you've ever had? Besides
that's a
comedy,
great
obviously.
question. I mean, I wouldn't call comedy a job yet. Right now, comedy is like it's like a hopeful passion, you
Yeah.
know?
It's
I mean,
kind yeah.
I've gotten certain, I wouldn't call them breaks, but I have like, I
You've been
walk
crushing.
away from like a weekend where you're like, whoa, I made this amount of money doing what? Telling jokes? Okay. Like if that was consistent, then yes, that would be maybe a
Yeah.
living one day. So,
Yeah.
and I find I do get kind of like the imposter syndrome too, where it's like, man, I don't belong here. What the hell am I doing? And I kind of have to like snap out of it a little bit. But yeah, my favorite job, shit, dude. I like making coffee for a long time. That's something I didn't know I would like. Uh, I kind of discovered making coffee in a time in my life where I was kind of going through a bit of like a chrysalis, if you will, a bit of like a transformation as a human, and learning how to make coffee kind of was right in that time where I was like trying new things and learning new things and trying to become a better person. So yeah, I definitely enjoy it. It's kind of fun, and now I drink coffee every day. So started working in coffee like 4 years ago, and now I drink it every single day, or else I'll probably die. So
Dude, I've been going hard at coffee too. I can imagine like when people get espresso machines, they get addicted to making it, eh? And they like almost the art of it. It's like meditative.
yeah, it's definitely cool to like apply yourself, and I've learned so much, like where I thought I knew everything because I could do like a fancy like little latte design, and I was like, oh, I know my shit. And then I moved here and worked at like a high-end coffee shop here where their main thing was like it has to taste good, it has to be perfect temperature. We have to dial in the espresso every couple of hours and make sure that we're putting out quality content. Their kind of idea was like, okay, when someone orders a latte, they're not just ordering a latte, they might be ordering this is their special treat for the week or something like that. Or you kind of have to treat each one as like a little experience, and I mean, it's pretty hard to go wrong if you have like really good beans. Like if you kind of know what you're doing, it's like hard to fuck up. And it's an easy thing too to like try too hard at. It's
Yeah.
fucking it's
There's an
coffee and
art
milk,
to it.
bro. It's
Yeah,
like
man.
quality ingredients and then the fancy stuff should come after, basically.
It's pretty cool how artisan it can get, and people just love it, eh? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and people spend a lot of money on it. That's how you know it's good. Like, if you have a
Mm-hmm.
latte every day, that's almost like you can spend like 60, $100 a week on coffees.
Yeah, totally, man. And I
Yeah.
mean, when you think about it, it's like it's a weird, like socially acceptable drug that's worked its way into our culture, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, I need a little pick me up, and it goes well with the working kind of structure that we've set our society up on, right? The whole 9 to 5 grind. So
I mean, they do call breaks at work coffee breaks for a reason.
it's true. Yeah, it's kind of invaded our culture.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But so good. But how much
I,
coffee
I
do you
love
think you
coffee.
drink? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, coffee addict, where are you at?
On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of coffee addiction, I'm probably at like I'm like at a 7.5. Where like, yeah, if I wanted to, I could stop drinking coffee and I probably would be okay. But I don't want to do that. I really like it a lot. So maybe closer to an 8. I don't know.
Yeah.
I only drink like 2 cups a day though. I try to limit it to that. And I can't drink it after like 1 p.m.
So you can see you're doing better than me. So I must be like a 9.5 or maybe a 9. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a snob about coffee, but if there's coffee around me, I'll just keep drinking and drinking it. And I'll drink like 1 pot a day, 2 pots. I'll drink it at any time, really. I'll actually
Yeah.
drink it all day and maybe drink like 10 cups.
Yeah, that's insane to me. That's pretty wild.
I know, but it's too savage. People are like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I think I'm an
I,
addict.
it's easy to have a coffee addiction. I feel like yeah, I definitely need it. Um, I don't need it to like start my day. I usually try to start my day with like, you know, drink a bottle of water. Like I have this Nalgene and I try to like finish one of these before I have any coffee just to like hydrate my system because coffee does dehydrate you, right? And so I find if I go to coffee too soon or drink too much too quick, my stomach is like fucked for the day. So I'm definitely very coffee sensitive, but
Dude, that's
I
great. You
still,
do that. I should try to copy your strategy on that. I normally wake up, try to chug a cup of water, then just start crushing coffee.
yeah, I try to drink it kind of intermittently. Like I'll have a cup of coffee and then drink some more water and try to do that. I think it really like helps your digestive system. Like a bunch of water first thing in the day kind of gets those bowels moving. It gets like the whole
Yeah.
your stuff cleaned out. I do a lot of weird shit that I think I've just been like experimenting with since the beginning of this year. I made all these like silly New Year's resolutions and I've been keeping up with them. And
Dude, what have you
I
been
don't,
doing?
I feel like my whole life right now is a bit of an experiment. I'm just like doing shit and I don't know really what it's for, but I'm like, well, try it out, see if it helps. So I'm, I'm meditating every day. I'm journaling every day. And then I'm doing the water thing. I'm trying to drink more water. And
Yeah,
it's
great.
interesting. Yeah,
How
man.
did the medis and journals affecting you? Would you say?
It's a good question. I definitely think this is gonna sound super weird. The other day, I was camping with my partner and a few of our friends, and they had this weird like game that was like a heart to heart like get to know you game, but it was like very intimate, very deep about like what you think the other person's best qualities are and things like that. It was a really
Oh,
like
wow.
feel good, like highly emotional, open up game. And I was like, the fuck are we doing right now? This feels like group therapy. But I remember the one of the people in the circle was like, James, one of the things I like about you is like how calm you are and how you can just kind of exist as yourself within a group and you don't have to like go too over the top to like assert your presence or whatever. And I hadn't really realized that. And I was like, shit, dude, I didn't even know that's something that I do. I don't know. I think since I've started this meditation practice, I feel like just a general sense of like awareness and also just like a separation between me and my emotions. Like, don't get me wrong, I get caught up in feeling a certain way from time to time, but that general, like, okay, I'm feeling something, but I'm not existing as that emotion, if that makes sense. Or
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like I'm much more observant, just like able to like sit with myself a lot more easy. I don't know. I feel like
Dude, that's
there's a lot of
fantastic.
benefits. Yeah. And I think like the way that a person's day is structured, like, you wake up, you start the hustle, you start exercise, you go to your job. Then after you're done work, you're consuming media, whether it's social media or some kind of TV, and then you brush your teeth and you go to bed. And throughout that period of the day, you have no real quiet. There's nothing calming about it, right? And so I look at meditation not as a chore, but it's like that's me time. That's my time where I turn off the world and kind of just like check in with my body, man. And it feels weird to say because it's something I never really did before, but yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a useful everyday practice for sure.
It's weird how it's like not, well, it's getting more and more common, but it's weird how valuable it is just to like spend time with yourself, although that sounds weird to say.
No, totally.
It's like you almost never just hang out with yourself and just like watch your thoughts and whatever and
Hmm.
process the different things that have happened to you. I've been trying to do
Hmm.
it too. I definitely think it's helpful, but I haven't been doing any formal medis. Maybe I should get back to them.
No, I mean, I think however you do it, I don't think there's a right way and a wrong way. Like sometimes I do guided meditations and other times I just like sit and take a breath, man, and you know,
Yeah.
calm down that monkey brain from grabbing on to the next thing. So I think it's
Yeah,
important.
man. What do you think of writing every day?
It's interesting. A lot of the times I think right now I'm only doing half the battle. So right now every day I'm writing just about my thought processes for the day, kind of logging like what I've been up to during the day. Maybe as like a cool, useful tool to like look back on. And I guess like in a sense it's beneficial to practice just writing your stream of thoughts. Like if you are a creative person like myself, like who writes things regularly, I think it's a good exercise for that. But I think I'm lacking in the reading part. So like if you're just writing a journal to write a journal, I feel like you're kind of screaming into the wind a little bit, where it's like unless you go back and you kind of read and analyze and maybe find some common themes about what you're writing about each day, and maybe you could identify some real personal issues within yourself. Like I've yet to do that. I've yet to kind of dissect what I've written, if that makes sense.
Dude, well, I've been doing that writing every day, let's say for like 5 years. And I was thinking about this actually, I think today or maybe yesterday, where it's like, what actually is the value of it? Just like
Totally.
brain dumping in writing every day. Is it even that
Hmm.
valuable? I never go back and read, pretty much. Every once in a while, I'll open up like an old one, but pretty much
Hmm.
none. But I was thinking today, it's like, if you can actually do that, sit down and write about what you think every day
Hmm.
for like 5, 10 years,
Hmm.
the real value is in you could sit down and write every day, right? So think about what you can do with that habit. You can
Yeah.
write a book, you can write freaking essays, you can
Yeah.
write anything you want. You can actually write. And that
Yeah.
skill in and of itself is pretty useful. And that
Yeah, it's
habit is
deadly.
like very, very deadly. And it's very hard for people to cultivate that habit. So once you do it, you
Hmm.
could eventually put it to use. And I put it to use like in university for sure.
Hmm.
And just in my
Totally.
personal life, I think it's useful. Even if the journal itself doesn't get turned into anything, the habit can get turned into something.
Yeah, I feel that too. Maybe I was a bit quick to poo-poo just writing stuff down because
Yeah.
I do agree that like I think I have the same thing. Like I haven't been doing it for as long. I've been doing it for just over 6 months now, right? And so it's definitely an interesting process. I've almost filled an entire notebook with just random thoughts about this is what I did today and this is how it made me feel and this is the processes that are going through my head. And I think even like you said, just writing is an important tool, not only for writing itself, but also conveying an idea, right? So like conversationally conveying like an idea or like a train of thought, I think it's super beneficial for that as well.
Yeah. It's like, plus, I guess, are you going to keep your journals, do you think?
Hell yeah, dude. Are you kidding me? Can you imagine, I don't know, 10 years from now, I'm like 36, almost 40 years old. I look back at what I was doing 10 years ago. Like
Yeah,
that
that's
seems cool to
sweet.
me.
That's
I
so
looked at
sweet.
a journal entry that I did because I wasn't journaling every day last year, but I felt like I was journaling when I needed to. Like instead of like reaching out to a friend or something like that, I would, write stuff down in a book. And I was reading something from a year ago and it was like almost like a time capsule. It was like, whoa, this is what I was thinking
That's
about
so
on this
sick, dude.
day, and it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because it just made me think about like when I went traveling, I went to Japan when I was like a kid. I think I was like 14 or 15 years old. Did an exchange with the city and it was like a huge experience for me. And my brother Dan was like, yo, dude, you gotta keep a journal every day and make sure you write down what you did and stuff because you're gonna want to look back at that a few years later and not let that experience kind of pass you by. And so that was the first time I ever journaled in my life was when I was like 14 years old
Dang.
across the world in this new crazy place. And so I actually looked back at that journal entry like not too long ago because I found my old like Japan books or whatever. I was like, holy shit, man! Like, what a trip! What a yeah. I don't know. It's really cool, man.
Yeah, it's almost like a kind of like this weird like gift to your future self that you make every day.
Yeah.
Because I'll definitely experience that too, where I'll look like an old journal will pop up because I do it all on this app called Penzu where it emails you your old ones. So
Hmm.
I do it electronically. Some people take offense to that kind of in the journaling club, well, not the journaling club, but people that journal. But I say, hey, it's way more consistent.
Yeah, man.
Also, I think it's better, but teach their own. But when I read those journals from back in the day, it'll like provoke memories that are still in you that you would never think about without that journal.
Totally.
So useful for that and
Yeah, I
cool.
think it's kind of cool to like keep a log of like what you're up to and what you thought about it and you might look back and be like, "Oh, I was so naive," or you might look back at like, "Wow, these were some good times," like I think it's awesome.
So awesome. Bro, should we call it there? I think Darren are gonna have dinner soon.
Yeah, man, that's fine. I gotta go do a show soon anyways. I was gonna
Dude, yes.
wait for you to pull the plug, but yeah, man, I feel like I spent a lot of time talking about the goddamn environment. I have no idea why, but
No, that was a great chat about the environment. Honestly, it was a good perspective that you took.
I just don't think we should be cutting down old ass trees, man.
Yeah,
Call me
we gotta
crazy.
keep those old units alive.
Yeah, why not?
Hell yeah. But dude, that was so fun. I had fun catching up. So my plan now is I'll like cut it into the pod and then maybe I'll cut it into clips and like post the cool clips.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, man. I feel like I talked a bit too much. Do you think so? I don't know.
I don't think so. I thought you gave great takes, to be honest. Like, I think if someone watches this, like, they'll be pretty impressed by your takes, or at least I was.
Thanks, dude. You gotta hear that from your friends sometimes that you got good takes on things. So
But
thanks,
that's
dude.
legit. Another thing why I'm stoked on the pod is it's kind of the same principle as the journal, where now
Hmm.
it's gonna be like the journal in 10 years. We
Hmm.
can go back and look at it, but just with our friends. So it's like a communal journal in some sense.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's sweet. Like, and it takes a bit, it's like almost like taking on the journaling responsibility in the podcast form and hooking up your friends with it.
That's cool. I never really thought about that. That's really cool.
Yeah, man. But yeah, yeah, that was sweet chat, man. And what's the details of your show today?
Oh, well, I did like a book show last night, and tonight is just like an open mic. So I'm just
Sick.
gonna try some like new material and see how it goes.
Dude, double good luck on it.
Thanks, man. It's not really, it's kind of fun right now. I'm doing shows, but I'm much more comfortable. I'm like not really making a big deal out of them. And it feels
Yeah.
like it's been beneficial to my stand up because, like, with like creative endeavors, normally, like when you go to like paint a picture or something, you're like, I'm going to paint this thing, right? And if you're not serious about it and you're all fucking willy nilly, it's going to come out shitty. But with comedy, if you're not serious about it, sometimes it can come out amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole point of it is to not be serious. So,
I guess would you say it's like less about the outcome, more about just the process of doing it?
yeah, I guess it's like if you're comfortable, people will be comfortable with you, or like,
Hmm.
you know, it's a lot of comedy is like your personality.
Yeah.
You're a fucking likable person, you know? And
Yeah.
then worry about jokes, you know. I don't know. I just try to have a good time up there. And then if you're having a good time, people are having a good time with you.
It is pretty sweet. You're definitely helping peeps have a good time, I'm sure.
I hope so, man. Just trying to spread that joy and positivity, dude.
Dude, that's a great way to end. But okay, man, I'll pause this.